The security guard grabbed Marcus Thompson's arm. "Sir, you need to leave. This area is for candidates only." Marcus didn't move. His 7-year-old daughter Maya pressed against his leg, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "I am a candidate." The guard laughed. Actually laughed. "Right. And I'm the CEO." 47 minutes later, that same guard would watch Marcus Thompson walk out of the server room after saving a billion-dollar company in 17 seconds. But first, they had to break him. They tried. God, how they tried. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Marcus Thompson had $17 to his name, $12 in his checking account, $5 crumpled in his back pocket, emergency money he'd been carrying since his wife's funeral 2 years ago. Sarah had always told him to keep cash on hand. You never know, baby. You just never know. She'd been right about a lot of things. He wished she'd been wrong about the cancer. The revolving doors of Sterling Dynamics pushed back against him like the building itself was rejecting his presence. Marcus pushed harder. He'd learned that lesson a long time ago. When something pushes you, you push back. You don't stop. You don't give up. Maya's small hand tightened around 2 of his fingers. Daddy, this place is really big. I know, sweetheart. Bigger than the hospital. Marcus felt his chest constrict. She still measured everything against that hospital. The place where they'd spent months watching her mother fade away. The place where Maya had learned what goodbye forever meant. Yeah, baby. Bigger than the hospital. The lobby stretched out before them, marble floors polished to a mirror. Shine glass walls reaching toward the sky. People in expensive suits moving with the kind of purpose that came from knowing exactly where you belonged. Marcus didn't belong here. He knew it. His worn khaki pants knew it. His faded blue button-down washed so many times the collar had started to fray definitely knew it. But Maya was wearing her best dress, the purple one, with the small white flowers that Sarah had bought 3 months before she died. And Maya had brushed her own hair this morning, the braids slightly uneven because Marcus was still learning, still practicing with YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning when the nightmares kept him awake anyway. They were here. They were trying. That had to count for something. It didn't. The receptionist saw them coming from 50 feet away. Her name was Monica. Marcus would learn that later. Right now, she was just a woman with a tablet and a smile that turned cold the moment her eyes landed on him. She leaned toward her colleague, whispered something. They both looked at Marcus, then at Maya, then back at each other. The colleague. A young man with slicked back hair and a tie that probably cost more than Marcus's entire outfit actually snorted. Marcus kept walking. Daddy? Maya's voice was small. Why are they looking at us like that? Don't worry about them, sweetheart. But they're... Maya. He stopped. Knelt down to her level, blocking her view of the judgment spreading across the lobby like a virus. Remember what I told you. Some people need time to see what's important. They don't know us yet. Will they be nice later? Marcus looked into his daughter's eyes. Sarah's eyes, that same deep brown, that same spark of hope that refused to die no matter how dark things got. Maybe. Maybe not. But that's okay. Because we know who we are. Right? Maya nodded slowly. We're the Thompsons. That's right. We're the Thompsons. And what do Thompsons do? We don't give up. Never. He kissed her forehead. Now let's go show these people what we're made of. He stood up. Maya straightened her dress. Together they walked toward the reception desk. Monica was ready for them. Can I help you? The question wasn't really a question. It was a challenge, a dare. Go ahead, her tone said. Give me a reason to call security. Marcus Thompson, I have an interview at 10 o'clock. IT support position. Monica's eyebrows rose exactly 1/4 of an inch. A practiced expression of disbelief. You're Marcus Thompson? Yes, ma'am. The IT candidate? Yes, ma'am. She looked at her tablet, then at Marcus, then at Maya, then back at her tablet as if checking to make sure she hadn't accidentally wandered into some kind of alternate reality. It says here you're a single parent. That's correct? Working 2 jobs currently. Night shift at Henderson Warehouse. Weekend IT support for small businesses. And you thought it was appropriate to bring a child to a corporate interview? Maya pressed closer to Marcus's leg. He could feel her trembling slightly. She was 7 years old. She understood more than people gave her credit for. My babysitter canceled this morning. Marcus kept his voice level, professional, the way he'd practiced in the mirror at 5 a.m. I apologize for the unconventional circumstances, but I'm fully prepared for the interview. My qualifications speak for themselves. Monica exchanged a look with her colleague. The kind of look that said, "Can you believe this guy? I'm sure they do." She didn't sound sure at all. "Have a seat. Someone will call you when we're ready." "Thank you." Marcus turned toward the waiting area. Behind him, he heard Monica's whisper, not quite quiet enough. $20 says he doesn't make it past the first question. Her colleague's response was louder. "I'll take that bet. 20 says he doesn't make it past the door." They laughed. Maya heard it. Marcus knew she heard it because her hand tightened around his fingers until her knuckles went pale. He didn't look back. He just kept walking. The waiting area was designed to intimidate. Leather chairs, abstract art, a massive window with a view of the city skyline. Everything positioned to remind visitors exactly where they stood in the hierarchy of the world. At the bottom, looking up, the other candidates were already there. 3 of them. Young, sharp, polished. A woman with red hair and a designer briefcase. A man with a Harvard tie pin and the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. Another man younger scrolling through his phone with the casual boredom of someone who'd already been offered 3 other positions this week. They all looked up when Marcus approached. The red-haired woman's smile flickered and died. The Harvard man actually moved his briefcase to the empty seat beside him, occupied now. Sorry, no room. The younger man didn't even bother. Just went back to his phone. Marcus found 2 empty chairs in the corner. He sat in one. Maya climbed into the other, arranging her stuffed rabbit on her lap. "Daddy." "Yeah, sweetheart. Can I color?" Marcus pulled her coloring book and crayons from his bag, a faded backpack he'd carried since college. The zipper was broken on one side. He'd fixed it with a safety pin. "Of course you can." Maya opened the book to a half-finished picture. A house. A tree. 2 stick figures, one big one, small, holding hands. She'd been working on that picture for 3 weeks, adding a little bit each day. Marcus had noticed she never drew a third figure anymore. She'd stopped drawing her mother after the funeral. Time passed slowly in that lobby. Marcus watched the other candidates get called one by one. The red-haired woman went first, clicking past them in heels that probably cost more than his rent. She was inside for 45 minutes. When she came out, she was smiling. The Harvard man was next. He walked like he already owned the building. Inside for 30 minutes. His smile when he emerged was even bigger than the woman's. The younger man barely looked up from his phone when his name was called. 20 minutes. He didn't bother smiling. Just walked out like the interview had been a minor inconvenience in his otherwise perfect day. Each time one of them passed Marcus, they glanced at Maya, at the coloring book, at the worn backpack. None of them said a word. Marcus checked his phone. 11:47 a.m. His interview had been scheduled for 10 hours, almost 2 hours. They'd been waiting almost 2 hours. "Daddy, I'm hungry." He reached into his bag and pulled out a granola bar, the last one. He'd packed 2. Maya had eaten the first one in the car. "Here you go, sweetheart." "What about you?" "I'm not hungry." He was starving, but that granola bar was for her. Everything was for her. That's what being a father meant. That's what Sarah had understood better than anyone. You take care of our baby, she'd whispered in that hospital bed the last night, the tubes and wires making her look so small. Promise me, Marcus, whatever happens, you take care of our Maya. I promise, he'd said, and he'd kept that promise every single day for 2 years. Through the grief that felt like drowning, through the jobs that paid nothing, through the nights when he wanted to give up, to just stop fighting to let the world win. He'd kept going, for her. Mr. Thompson. Marcus looked up. Monica stood at the edge of the waiting area, tablet in hand, expression somewhere between boredom and contempt. They're ready for you now. The elevator ride was silent. Monica stood on one side, eyes fixed on her tablet. Marcus stood on the other, Maya's hand in his, watching the floor numbers climb. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The doors opened onto a hallway that smelled like money. Fresh flowers on every table. Carpet so thick it swallowed footsteps. Doors with gold nameplates. Monica led them past a series of offices, each one larger than Marcus's entire apartment. People sat behind mahogany desks, talking on phones, typing on computers that cost more than cars. Nobody looked up. The interview will be conducted in Conference Room B. Monica's voice was flat, rehearsed. The panel consists of Richard Garrett, Director of Operations, Jennifer Hayes, Head of Human Resources, and Kevin Wu, IT Department Supervisor. Thank you. Mr. Thompson. Monica stopped outside a frosted glass door. A word of advice. Marcus waited. This company has certain standards, a certain image to maintain. Perhaps in the future you might consider making alternative arrangements for, she glanced at Maya, distractions. The word hit Marcus like a slap. Distraction. His daughter. His reason for living. His whole world reduced to a single dismissive word. He could feel anger rising in his chest. Hot. Dangerous. The kind of anger that had gotten him through the worst nights, that had helped him survive when surviving seemed impossible. But he didn't let it show. He'd learned that lesson too. The world didn't want to see a black man angry. The world wanted him quiet, compliant, easy to dismiss. So he smiled. The smile he'd perfected over 2 years of being overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. Thank you for the advice, he said. I'll keep that in mind. Monica's expression flickered surprise, maybe that he hadn't taken the bait. The panel is waiting. She opened the door. Marcus took a breath. Ready, sweetheart? Maya looked up at him. Her eyes were serious, brave. Ready, Daddy? They walked in together. The conference room was built for intimidation. A mahogany table stretched 15 feet long. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with cold light. 3 people sat on one side, arranged like judges at a tribunal. Richard Garrett sat in the center. Late 50s, silver hair, a face that looked like it had never smiled at anything that wasn't a profit margin. Jennifer Hayes sat to his left, blonde, sharp-featured. Her pen was already moving across a notepad, documenting something before Marcus had even opened his mouth. Kevin Wu sat to the right, younger, maybe 30. He was the only one who looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Marcus and Maya with something that might have been sympathy. Richard spoke first. Mr. Thompson, please sit. Marcus guided Maya to a corner chair away from the table. He set up her coloring book and crayons, arranging them quietly, while 3 pairs of eyes watched his every move. Sweetheart, Daddy has to talk to these people for a while. You just sit here and color, okay? Nice and quiet. Okay, Daddy. He kissed the top of her head. Then he turned and walked to the table, pulling out the single chair on the opposite side. Alone, facing all 3 of them. Richard didn't waste time. Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Thompson. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Your resume shows a 2-year gap in employment in this industry. In technology, that's practically a lifetime. Care to explain how you expect to be relevant after disappearing for 2 years? Marcus had prepared for this question. had rehearsed the answer until the words felt worn smooth. But saying them out loud in this room in front of these people with his daughter sitting 10 feet away was harder than he'd imagined. My wife passed away 2.5 years ago. The words hung in the air. Jennifer's pen stopped moving. Kevin looked down at the table. Richard's expression didn't change, not even a flicker. I needed time. Marcus continued, his voice steady, to care for my daughter, to process our loss. I took on part-time work that offered flexibility jobs that let me be there when she needed me, but they weren't in my field. Jennifer's pen resumed its movement across the notepad. Her handwriting was aggressive, pointed. So you prioritized personal matters over professional development. It wasn't a question. I prioritized my family. Marcus met her eyes. I don't consider that a weakness. I consider it a responsibility. Richard snorted. Actually snorted like Marcus had just told a particularly bad joke. In this business, Mr. Thompson, any absence is a weakness. Technology doesn't wait for grief counseling. We need people who are committed, people who put the company first. His eyes flickered toward Maya. People who don't have distractions. There was that word again, distraction. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. My daughter is not a distraction. Really? Richard smiled, a cold, thin expression that didn't reach his eyes. Then explain to me why she's sitting in my conference room instead of at school, or with a babysitter, or with literally any other arrangement that would demonstrate professional judgment. The babysitter canceled this morning. I couldn't reschedule. Your HR coordinator made it very clear that this was a one-time opportunity. So you decided to bring a child to a corporate interview at a Fortune 500 company. Richard shook his head slowly, savoring the moment. That's certainly a choice. Jennifer leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, I need to ask you directly. If you were hired for this position, which requires round-the-clock availability, weekend emergencies, late nights when systems crash, how exactly would you manage with your situation? My situation. Single father. Young child. Limited support system. She tapped her pen against the notepad. The math doesn't add up, does it? Something would have to give. Either the job or the child. The room was silent. Maya had stopped coloring. Marcus could feel her eyes on his back, watching, listening, understanding more than anyone in this room realized. He thought about the last 2 years. The night shifts, the weekend jobs, the 2 a.m. YouTube tutorials for braiding hair, the birthday parties where Maya was the only kid without a mother, the school events where teachers looked at him with pity, the landlord who'd given him exactly 3 more days to come up with rent. He thought about the $12 in his checking account, the $5 in his pocket, the empty refrigerator at home. He thought about Sarah. You take care of our baby. Promise me. He stood up. You want to know if I can handle this job? Richard raised an eyebrow. That's generally the purpose of an interview, yes. Then let me tell you what I've handled. Marcus didn't sit back down. He couldn't. Something was building inside him. Not anger, not anymore. Something else. Something that had been waiting 2 years to be said. I've spent the last 2 years managing a household on a fraction of what your junior staff earns. I've learned to optimize every minute of every day because I had no choice, because my daughter's well-being depended on my efficiency. Jennifer opened her mouth to interrupt. Marcus didn't let her. I've troubleshot computer systems at 2 a.m. while Maya slept in the next room because clients in other time zones needed help, and I couldn't afford to lose the work. I've learned more about network security in the last 18 months than most people learn in a decade. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because every skill I added was another chance to give my daughter the life she deserves. Richard's smug expression was frozen now, uncertain. You want to know if I can handle pressure? I've handled pressure that would break most people in this building. I've sat in hospital waiting rooms not knowing if my wife would survive the night. I've held her hand while the machines kept her alive. I've watched her die slowly, painfully, and then I've gone home and made breakfast for our daughter like everything was fine. Because that's what she needed. Because that's what fathers do. The conference room had gone completely silent. I've explained death to a 5-year-old who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. I've held her during the nightmares. I've rebuilt our entire life from the ground up while working 2 jobs and making sure Maya never felt unloved. Not for one single day. He looked at each of them in turn. Richard, Jennifer, Kevin. You see a man who doesn't belong here. A man with gaps in his resume and a child he shouldn't have brought. You see a distraction, a liability, a risk. He took a breath. I see a father who refused to give up. A father who's sitting in this room right now because his daughter deserves better than a life where she learns that the world is too hard to fight. I'm here because I made a promise to my wife. I'm here because I made a promise to myself. And I don't break my promises. He sat back down. If that makes me unqualified in your eyes, then I'm sorry for wasting your time. But I won't apologize for being a father first. I won't apologize for putting my daughter above your expectations. And I won't apologize for showing her that sometimes the only way to win is to keep fighting when everyone tells you to stop. The silence stretched. Jennifer had stopped writing entirely. Kevin was staring at Marcus with something that looked almost like respect. And Richard's face had changed. The smugness was gone. In its place was something harder to read. Irritation maybe, or something else entirely. The conference room door opened. She stood in the doorway like she owned the building. Which technically she did. Emily Sterling was 34 years old, with dark hair pulled back from a face that had graced the covers of business magazines and newspaper profiles. She had inherited Sterling dynamics from her father 3 years ago, and she had spent every day since trying to prove she deserved it. Her eyes swept the room, landed on Richard, on Jennifer, on the man sitting alone on one side of the table. Then they landed on Maya, on the little girl in the purple dress with the stuffed rabbit who had stopped coloring and was watching her father with eyes full of fierce protective love. Emily had been downstairs, had witnessed the mockery in the lobby, had made a mental note to review hiring practices, to have a conversation with Monica that wouldn't be pleasant. But she hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected to walk into a conference room and find a man who had just spoken the most honest words she'd heard in years. Am I interrupting? Richard straightened immediately. Ms. Sterling, we were just finishing up the interview with Mr. Thompson. Emily's voice was calm. Marcus Thompson, I know. She stepped into the room. The door closed behind her. I'd like to observe the rest of this interview, if no one objects. It wasn't a question. No one objected. Emily walked to the window and stood there, arms crossed, watching Marcus, watching his daughter, watching to see what would happen next. She didn't have to wait long, because 17 seconds later, the lights flickered. And everything changed. The lights flickered twice. Marcus felt it before he understood it, that subtle wrongness that came from years of working with systems, from knowing how electricity moved through buildings, from understanding that fluorescent lights didn't stutter without reason. The wall-mounted display went dark. Then came the sounds from outside. Muffled at first, then louder. Exclamations. Hurried footsteps. The particular panic of people whose digital world was collapsing around them. Emily Sterling's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and Marcus watched something shift in her expression. The composed CEO disappeared. In her place stood a woman staring at a nightmare. This interview is postponed. She was gone before anyone could respond, moving with the controlled urgency of someone who knew exactly how bad things were about to get. Richard scrambled to his feet, fumbling with his own phone. His smugness had evaporated, replaced by genuine alarm. He rushed out after Emily without a word to Marcus, without even a backward glance. Jennifer followed seconds later, her heels clicking frantically against the floor. Kevin hesitated at the door. He looked back at Marcus, then at Maya, something apologetic in his eyes. "You should probably stay here. I don't know what's happening, but it's bad." Then he was gone too. Marcus sat alone at the mahogany table listening to the chaos spreading through the building like wildfire. "Daddy!" Maya's voice pulled him back. She had abandoned her coloring book and was standing beside her chair, clutching her stuffed rabbit with both hands. "What's wrong with everyone?" Marcus stood and walked to her, kneeling down to her level. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm sure they'll figure it out." "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby. We're fine. Everything's going to be fine." He didn't know if that was true, but he said it anyway because that's what fathers did. They lied to protect their children from fear. They built walls between innocence and reality. They pretended the world wasn't burning, even when they could smell the smoke. "Stay right here." "Okay, Daddy's going to see what's happening. I'll be right where you can see me." Maya nodded, settling back into her chair. She picked up a crayon blue, her favorite color, and returned to her picture. Marcus moved to the conference room door and looked out through the glass walls. The hallway had transformed into something unrecognizable. Employees clustered around monitors that displayed nothing but error messages. A woman near the elevator was speaking frantically into her phone, her free hand gesturing wildly. Two men in suits were arguing their voices, raised fingers pointing at each other like children assigning blame. Marcus caught fragments of conversation as people rushed past. "Entire system is down. Can't access anything. Ransomware has to be. We're completely locked out." His pulse quickened. He knew those words. He had lived those words. 3 years ago, before everything fell apart, before Sarah got sick, before his world collapsed into hospital rooms and funeral arrangements and learning to survive alone. He had been a cybersecurity specialist at Meridian Tech. Not senior level, but good. Really good. He had a gift for seeing patterns others missed, for understanding how attackers thought, for finding the single thread that could unravel an entire assault. And 3 years ago, he had faced exactly this kind of attack. Marcus stepped out of the conference room, leaving the door open so Maya could see him. He moved toward the IT department, following the sound of raised voices and the acrid smell of fear. Through transparent walls, he could see Emily Sterling standing amid her technical team. Her composure was cracking as one staffer after another shook their heads. No one had answers. No one knew how to stop what was happening. A large monitor displayed cascading code error messages, scrolling too fast for most people to read. But Marcus's trained eyes caught something in the pattern. He stopped walking. His breath caught in his chest. He knew this code. The signature was buried in the noise, hidden beneath layers of obfuscation. But it was there. The same architecture, the same logic, the same devastating efficiency. He had spent weeks dissecting this exact malware at Meridian Tech, had mapped its behavior, had found its weakness. And then they had fired him. Taken his work. Given credit to someone else. Let the company burn. Marcus stood in that hallway watching Sterling Dynamics suffer the same fate, and something cold settled in his stomach. He could help. He knew exactly how to stop this. But these people who had mocked him, dismissed him, called his daughter a distraction, why should he help them? The thought lasted exactly 3 seconds. Because through the glass, he saw a woman crying at her desk. Saw a young man with his head in his hands. Saw dozens of people whose lives were about to be destroyed. Their jobs, their savings, their futures, all because someone had found a way to turn code into a weapon. They weren't the ones who had humiliated him. They were just people, workers, employees with families and mortgages and dreams that were about to be crushed. Marcus thought about Maya, about the promise he'd made to Sarah, about the kind of man he wanted to be, the kind of man he wanted his daughter to see. He started walking again, faster now, purposeful. He reached the IT department just as Emily's voice cut through the chaos. "Someone tell me we have a solution. Someone tell me we're not about to lose everything we've built." Her technical team exchanged helpless glances. The head of cybersecurity, a man with sweat staining his expensive shirt, shook his head slowly. "We've tried everything, Emily. Standard isolation protocols, backup restoration, manual shutdowns. Nothing works. This thing is adaptive. Every time we block one avenue, it finds another." "Then find something we haven't tried." "There's nothing left to try. This malware is unlike anything I've seen. It's learning from our defenses, evolving in real time." Marcus stepped forward. "I think I know what that is." Every head in the room turned toward him. Emily's eyes widened slightly as she recognized him. The man from the interview, the single father with the little girl. The one she had come to observe. "What did you say?" Marcus nodded toward the main monitor where code was still cascading across the screen. "The malware. I've seen this pattern before. I know how to stop it." The head of cybersecurity, Douglas, according to his nameplate, actually laughed. "Who is this security?" He looked around the room, incredulous. "We have an unauthorized person in the server room." "He was being interviewed," Emily said quietly, "for the IT support position." "IT support." Douglas's laugh turned bitter. "That's entry level. We're facing a catastrophic breach, and you want me to listen to some entry-level candidate who probably couldn't configure a router?" Marcus didn't flinch. "This malware uses a polymorphic encryption engine with a self-modifying code base. Every time your system tries to quarantine it, it rewrites itself and finds a new attack vector. Standard antivirus can't touch it because it's never the same program twice." The room went silent. Douglas's face had gone pale. "How do you know that?" "Because I fought this exact code 3 years ago, at Meridian Tech. It took down their entire network in under an hour." Marcus paused. "But before it did, I found the kill switch." Emily stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "Why didn't anyone else find it?" "Because they fired me before I could document it." The words hung in the air, heavy with years of bitterness and loss. "I took time off when my wife got sick. My supervisor decided that made me unreliable. When I came back after she passed, my access had been revoked. My work had been credited to someone else. The company never recovered." Marcus's voice was flat, matter of fact, like he was reading a weather report instead of describing the destruction of his career. "Last I heard, they're still in bankruptcy proceedings." Douglas crossed his arms, his expression shifting from mockery to suspicion. "Convenient story. You show up on the same day as a major breach, somehow know exactly how to stop it. That's a hell of a coincidence, don't you think?" "Douglas?" Emily started. "No, think about it. For all we know, he's connected to this attack. Maybe he planted it. Maybe this whole thing is a setup." Marcus felt the accusation land like a punch to the gut. He had expected dismissal, expected mockery, expected to be ignored. He hadn't expected to be accused of terrorism. "I didn't plant anything," he said quietly. "I came here for a job interview, to try to give my daughter a better life, that's all." "Right, and I'm supposed to just take your word for it." "Douglas," Emily's voice had hardened, "that's enough." "Emily, you can't seriously be considering—" "I said that's enough." The room fell silent. Emily Sterling didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Authority radiated from her like heat from a fire. She turned to Marcus. "You said you know how to stop this. What do you need?" 2 minutes at one of your terminals." Douglas made a sound of disbelief. "This is insane. We can't give a stranger access to our systems in the middle of a crisis. The liability alone—" "What liability?" Emily cut him off. "Look around you, Douglas. Our systems are already compromised. Client data, financial records, proprietary software, all of it being encrypted by malware that your team can't stop." She gestured at the monitors where error messages continued their relentless cascade. "In 10 minutes, maybe less, this attack will reach our core financial systems, client banking information. We're talking about exposure for hundreds of thousands of people. After that, there's nothing left to save. But the protocols, forget the protocols. The protocols have failed. Emily looked at Marcus again, and something passed between them, a recognition maybe. Two people who understood what it meant to be underestimated. If he's wrong, we've lost nothing we weren't already losing. If he's right... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Douglas shook his head, but he stepped aside. Marcus moved toward the nearest workstation. Then he stopped. Maya. She was still in the conference room alone, surrounded by chaos she couldn't understand. He couldn't leave her. Couldn't focus on saving a company while his daughter sat frightened and abandoned. I need to get my daughter. Douglas threw his hands up. Oh, for God's sake. I'll wait, Emily said simply. Go. Marcus moved quickly through the hallway, past clusters of panicked employees, past monitors flashing warnings, past the wreckage of a company in freefall. Maya was exactly where he'd left her, sitting in the corner chair, coloring with fierce concentration. When she saw him, her face lit up. Daddy, I finished my picture. She held it up, the drawing she'd been working on for weeks. But something had changed. She'd added something new. A yellow sun at the top, two stick figures holding hands at the bottom. And between them, smaller, a third figure. A little girl with curly hair and a purple dress. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Marcus's voice caught. That's the most beautiful picture you've ever made. It's us, Daddy. You and me. And I put the sun there because Mommy always said she loved sunny days. So now she can see us from heaven and know we're okay. Marcus pulled her into a hug, pressing his face against her hair so she wouldn't see his eyes. She can see us, baby. She's always watching. I know. Maya pulled back, her expression serious. Daddy, why is everyone running around scared? There's a problem with the computers. The people here don't know how to fix it. But you know, right? You're really good with computers. He smiled. Yeah, sweetheart, I think I know. Then you should help them. That's what I'm going to do. But I need you to come with me, okay? I need you close. Maya nodded and gathered her crayons, tucking them carefully into her backpack. She picked up her stuffed rabbit and her picture, holding both against her chest like treasures. Ready, Daddy? That's my girl. They walked back to the IT department together, hand in hand, father and daughter, moving through chaos like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Because they had. Marcus had carried Maya through the chaos of losing her mother, through the chaos of rebuilding their lives, through every dark night and desperate morning for 2 years. This was just another storm. And Thompsons didn't stop for storms. When they reached the server room, Emily was waiting. Her eyes went to Maya, and something softened in her expression. There's a chair in the corner, she said. She can sit there. I'll make sure no one bothers her. Marcus settled Maya into the chair, arranging her coloring supplies on a small table someone had cleared. Daddy needs to work for a few minutes, okay? Just like at home when I fix our computer. Okay. Maya was already opening her coloring book to a new page. I'll make another picture. He kissed the top of her head and turned to face the room. Every eye was on him. Douglas stood with his arms crossed, hostility radiating from every pore. The other technicians watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Emily stood apart, her expression unreadable. Marcus walked to the workstation and sat down. The keyboard felt familiar under his fingers, like coming home after a long journey, like remembering who he used to be before grief and poverty had worn him down to nothing. The code on the screen was an old enemy wearing new clothes. He had spent weeks learning its language, understanding its logic, mapping its architecture, finding the single vulnerability that its creators had tried so hard to hide. His fingers began to move. What are you doing? Douglas demanded, watching over his shoulder. Those commands are obsolete. No one uses that protocol anymore. That's why it still works. Marcus bypassed the compromised firewall, using a backdoor technique that had been abandoned years ago. Modern systems didn't account for it anymore. Security had evolved past. It moved on to newer threats, forgotten the old weaknesses. But the malware hadn't forgotten. Its creators had built it on old foundations, trusting that no one would think to look backward while everyone else was looking forward. "That's impossible," Douglas muttered. "You can't just watch." The encryption cascade on the main monitor stuttered, slowed, stopped. 17 seconds. That was how long it took for Marcus to find the dependency loop in the malware's core replication module, to interrupt the timing sequence at exactly the right moment, to crash the program before it could adapt. 17 seconds to do what Douglas's entire team couldn't do in 30 minutes. The room held its breath. On the main display systems that had been offline began flickering back to life. Error messages disappeared, replaced by normal operations. The cascade of destruction reversed itself, damage contained, data preserved. That's impossible." Douglas was staring at the screen like he'd witnessed a miracle. Or a trick. "You couldn't have, in 17 seconds. The malware has a dependency loop in its core replication module," Marcus said, pushing back from the terminal. "Interrupt the timing sequence at exactly the right moment, and it crashes before it can adapt. But you have to know where to look, and you have to be fast." He stood up. "Your systems should be recovering now. You'll want to run a full diagnostic to make sure there's no residual damage. And you might want to update your firewall protocols. The backdoor I used shouldn't exist anymore." He walked back to Maya without waiting for a response. She looked up from her coloring book. "Did you fix it, Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart, I fixed it. I knew you would." She smiled that bright, trusting smile that made everything worth fighting for. "You're the best at computers." Behind them, the room had erupted into activity. Technicians rushing to verify systems. Phones ringing with reports of recovered data. The controlled chaos of crisis averted. But Marcus barely noticed. He was kneeling beside his daughter, looking at the new picture she'd started. It showed two stick figures again, one big, one small, standing in front of a building. "What's this one?" "That's us," Maya said. "At Daddy's new job." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. She believed in him. After everything, the poverty, the struggle, the endless disappointments, his 7-year-old daughter still believed that her father could do anything. He couldn't let her down. He wouldn't let her down. "Mr. Thompson." Emily Sterling's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like wonder. Marcus stood and turned to face her. "Thank you," she said. I don't know how to." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." She glanced at Maya, then back at Marcus. "I came down here because I saw how my staff treated you in the lobby. The mockery, the contempt. I was planning to review our hiring practices, to have some difficult conversations with HR." She paused. "But I never expected this." "Neither did I." Emily almost smiled. "No, I don't suppose you did." Douglas appeared at her shoulder, his expression a complicated mix of humiliation and grudging respect. "Emily, we need to talk. About security protocols. About what just happened." "Later, Douglas." "But," I said later. She didn't take her eyes off Marcus. "Right now, I'd like to speak with Mr. Thompson. Privately." Douglas opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it. He walked away, shoulders stiff with wounded pride. Emily gestured toward the door. "My office is on the top floor. I think you and I have a lot to discuss." Marcus hesitated. He looked at Maya, still coloring, still peaceful, still blissfully unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded around her. "She comes with me." "Of course." Emily's voice was gentle. "I wouldn't have it any other way." They walked through the recovering building together, the CEO of a billion-dollar company, a single father in worn khakis, and a 7-year-old girl clutching a stuffed rabbit. People stopped and stared as they passed. The same people who had whispered and smirked in the lobby. The same people who had dismissed Marcus as a joke, a charity case, a man who didn't belong. They weren't laughing now. Marcus kept his eyes forward, his hand wrapped around Maya's, his head held high. He had spent 2 years being invisible, being overlooked, being told he wasn't enough. 17 seconds had changed everything. But as they stepped into the elevator and the doors closed behind them, Marcus knew the hardest part wasn't over. He had saved their company. That was the easy part. Now he had to convince them he was worth keeping. The elevator climbed in silence. Maya pressed her nose against the glass wall, watching the city shrink beneath them. Her breath fogged the window as she counted floors. 10, 11, 12. Marcus stood beside Emily, acutely aware of the distance between them. The CEO in her tailored suit, the unemployed father in his faded button-down. 2 people from different worlds trapped together in a rising box of glass and steel. "She's beautiful," Emily said quietly. "Your daughter." "She's everything." Emily nodded slowly, as if she understood exactly what he meant. "How old?" 7, 8 in March. "Does she know what you just did down there?" Marcus glanced at Maya, still counting floors, still lost in the simple wonder of height and glass and city lights. "She knows Daddy fixed a computer. That's enough for now." The elevator slowed, stopped. The doors opened onto a hallway that smelled like fresh flowers and expensive coffee. "This way," Emily said. Her office occupied the corner of the top floor. Through the windows, Marcus could see the entire city spread out below buildings and streets and tiny cars moving like ants. It was the kind of view that reminded you how small most people were, how insignificant. But the office itself felt different from the rest of the building, warmer, more human. Photographs lined the walls, Emily with her father. Emily at graduations and ribbon cuttings, Emily surrounded by employees at company picnics. Books filled the shelves, and not the decorative kind. These had cracked spines and dog-eared pages. Books that had actually been read. "Please sit." Emily gestured to a leather couch near the window. "Maya, there's a plate of cookies on my desk. Help yourself." Maya's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? Take as many as you want." Maya looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded, and she scampered toward the desk, her earlier fear forgotten in the face of chocolate chip cookies. Marcus settled onto the couch. His body was heavy with exhaustion, the kind that came from too much adrenaline draining away all at once. He hadn't slept well in days, hadn't eaten since yesterday. The granola bar he'd given Maya had been the only food in his bag. Emily sat across from him, her posture straight, but her expression open. Curious, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she'd never seen before. "Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning." Marcus hesitated. He had buried this story for so long, had learned to speak around it, through it, never directly at it. The truth was heavy, and he'd grown tired of carrying it. But something in Emily's expression made him want to try. "I was a cybersecurity specialist at Meridian Tech," he began. "Not senior level, but good at what I did. I had a talent for seeing patterns others missed, for understanding how attackers thought." He paused. "When I got hired at 28, I thought I'd finally made it, finally found my place." "What happened?" "Sarah happened." The name still hurt to say. "My wife. We met in college. She was studying nursing. I was the awkward computer nerd who couldn't talk to girls." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She asked me out. Can you believe that this beautiful, brilliant woman just walked up to me in the library and said, 'You look like you need dinner. I'm buying.'" Emily smiled. "She sounds remarkable." She was. Marcus's voice caught. "We got married 2 years later. Had Maya 3 years after that. Everything was perfect. We had a little apartment in Oakland. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I was moving up at Meridian. Sarah was working at the Children's Hospital. Maya was healthy and happy, and laughing all the time." He stopped. The next part was harder. Then Sarah started getting tired. Not regular tired, bone tired. The kind that doesn't go away with sleep. She thought it was just the stress of the job, the long hours. But it kept getting worse. Cancer. Marcus nodded. Ovarian. Stage 3 by the time they found it. The doctor said it was aggressive, said we needed to start treatment immediately. Across the room, Maya had found the cookies and was eating one with careful, delicate bites. Her feet swung beneath the chair, not quite reaching the floor. She was humming softly, a song Sarah used to sing. I took leave from Meridian, Marcus continued. The company had a policy 60 days of family medical leave. I thought that would be enough. I thought the treatment would work, and Sarah would get better, and everything would go back to normal. He laughed bitterly. Funny how we tell ourselves things like that. How we believe them because the alternative is too terrible to face. How long did she fight? 18 months. Chemo, radiation, 3 surgeries, experimental treatments that cost everything we had and more. I sat with her through all of it, held her hand during the bad days. Read to her when she was too weak to hold a book. Told her stories about the future, we were going to have vacations, we'd take places, we'd see grandchildren we'd spoil. His voice cracked. She knew. Toward the end, she knew it wasn't going to happen. But she let me talk anyway. Let me pretend. Because that's who she was. Always thinking about everyone else, even when she was the one dying. Emily said nothing. She just listened, her eyes never leaving his face. The night before she died, she made me promise something. Marcus had to stop, had to breathe, had to push through the tightness in his chest. She said, "You take care of our baby. Whatever happens, Marcus, you take care of Maya. Promise me." And you did. I've tried. He looked at his daughter, still eating cookies, still humming that song. Every single day for 2 years, I've tried to be enough for her, to be both parents when I can barely manage being one. To make her feel safe and loved in a world that keeps trying to tear us apart. Emily leaned forward. What happened at Meridian? After Sarah passed. The question brought Marcus back to the present, back to the anger he'd learned to bury. I went back to work 2 weeks after the funeral. I thought I needed the routine, the distraction, and I had bills, hospital bills, funeral costs, things that don't wait for grief to pass. He shook his head. But when I got there, everything had changed. Changed how? My projects were reassigned. My access was revoked. The work I'd done on malware response, months of research, late nights, weekends, all of it had been credited to someone else. Who? My supervisor, a man named Patterson. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd never written a line of security code in his life. He was a manager, a politician, the kind of guy who spent more time in meetings than actually working. But somehow my research had his name on it. My documentation, my testing protocols, my discovery of the kill switch, all of it filed under his achievements. You must have been furious. I was. I went to HR, demanded to see the records, demanded an explanation. Marcus laughed a hollow sound. They told me there had been some administrative confusion while I was on leave, that Patterson had stepped in to ensure my work wasn't lost, that I should be grateful he'd preserved my contributions. And you didn't believe them. He stole my work, plain and simple. And when I pushed back, when I refused to let it go, they decided I was the problem. Marcus's voice hardened. 2 weeks after I buried my wife, they terminated my employment. Said I was unreliable. Said I had demonstrated poor judgment by prioritizing personal matters over professional responsibilities. They had security escort me out of the building like I was a criminal. Emily's expression had grown darker as he spoke. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. What happened to Meridian? The attack came 6 months later. The same malware I'd been studying. The same code I'd learned to stop. Marcus met her eyes. By then, I was working night shifts at a warehouse weekend. IT jobs for small businesses, anything to keep Maya fed and the lights on. I heard about it on the news. Watched my old company crumble. Watched 3,000 people lose their jobs. And I knew that if they'd listened to me, if they'd given me the chance to finish my work, none of it would have happened. And Patterson. Promoted. VP of Security at some company in Seattle now. 6-figure salary, corner office. Marcus's smile was bitter. The world doesn't always punish the guilty, Ms. Sterling. Sometimes it rewards them. Silence filled the office. Maya had finished her cookies and was now exploring the bookshelves, standing on tiptoe to read the spines. She pulled out a book with a colorful cover and brought it to Marcus. "Daddy, can you read this to me?" Marcus looked at the book. It was a children's story. Something about a rabbit going on an adventure. He had no idea why Emily Sterling had a children's book in her office, but he didn't ask. "Maybe later, sweetheart. The nice lady and I are talking." "It's okay," Emily said. "She can look at the pictures." Maya settled onto the floor near Marcus's feet, the book open in her lap, turning pages with careful attention. Emily watched her for a moment. Then she turned back to Marcus. "I inherited this company from my father 3 years ago. Heart attack, sudden. One day he was here running everything, and the next day he was gone." She paused. "I know it's not the same as losing a spouse, but I understand something about grief, about carrying a weight that never quite goes away. I'm sorry. So am I. For what happened to you. For what happened to your wife. For the way my company treated you today." Emily stood and walked to her desk, picking up a tablet. "I had my assistant run a background check while you were working on the malware. I hope you don't mind. Find anything interesting? Your former employer has had 17 lawsuits filed against them since the collapse. Former employees testified that leadership falsified records and stole intellectual property. Patterson was named in 3 separate depositions." She looked up. "You were telling the truth." "I usually am." "The gaps in your resume aren't signs of incompetence. They're signs of a system that punished you for being a good father and husband." Emily set down the tablet. "I want to offer you a job." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "I want you to lead a new cybersecurity initiative. Build a team from the ground up. Implement protocols that will prevent what happened today from ever happening again." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." "You don't know me. We've had one conversation." "I know enough." Emily crossed her arms. "I know you saved my company when everyone else failed. I know you did it in 17 seconds when my entire security team couldn't do it in 30 minutes. I know you put your daughter first, even when it cost you everything, and I know that's exactly the kind of person I want building my defenses." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the door burst open. Douglas strode in, Monica right behind him. Both wore expressions of barely contained fury. "Emily, we need to talk." Douglas didn't even acknowledge Marcus. "This is a mistake. A massive, catastrophic mistake." Emily's expression cooled. "Douglas, I don't recall inviting you to this meeting. The board needs to know what's happening. You cannot hand a senior position to some random candidate who walked in off the street. He saved the company. He might have caused the attack." Douglas gestured wildly at Marcus. "Think about it. He shows up on the exact day of a major breach, somehow knows exactly how to stop it. Has some convenient sob story about working on this malware 3 years ago. It's too perfect. It's a setup." Monica stepped forward, her tablet clutched to her chest. "I've been reviewing the security logs. There are irregularities, things that don't add up." "What kind of irregularities?" Emily's voice was dangerously calm. "The timing of the attack. The specific systems that were targeted. The way the malware seemed designed to exploit weaknesses in our firewall that aren't publicly known." Monica glanced at Marcus. "Someone with inside knowledge could have engineered this. Someone who wanted to look like a hero." Marcus felt the accusations settle over him like a weight. This was how it happened. This was how Patterson had destroyed him at Meridian, not with evidence, but with insinuation, with doubt, with the kind of whispered accusations that were impossible to disprove. He stood up slowly. "You think I planted that malware?" "I think it's suspicious," Douglas said. "I think we need a full investigation before we hand this man access to our most sensitive systems." "I came here for a job interview." Marcus's voice was quiet, controlled. "I came here with $12 in my bank account and a daughter who needed to eat dinner tonight. I came here because I've spent 2 years trying to survive, and this was my last chance." "How convenient." "Douglas." Emily's voice cracked like a whip. "That's enough. Emily, listen to me." "No, you listen." She stepped toward Douglas, and something in her posture made him take a step back. "I watched you and your team flounder for 30 minutes while our systems were destroyed. I watched you dismiss every suggestion. I watched you panic while client data was being encrypted and financial records were being stolen. And then I watched this man you laughed at in the lobby do, in 17 seconds, what you couldn't do in half an hour. That doesn't prove. It proves he's competent. It proves he's capable. It proves he has skills that you clearly lack." Emily's eyes were blazing. "And it proves that if I'd listened to your hiring recommendations, he never would have gotten past the front door. We would have lost everything." Monica tried another approach. "Ms. Sterling, I understand you're grateful, but there are protocols, background checks, reference verification. We can't just—" "I've seen his background check, I've verified his story, and I've made my decision." Emily turned to Marcus. "The position is yours if you want it. Head of Cybersecurity Initiative. Competitive salary, comprehensive benefits, and flexible scheduling." The room went silent. Marcus looked at his daughter still sitting on the floor with the book in her lap. She had stopped turning pages and was watching the adults with wide, worried eyes. He looked at Douglas, whose face was red with humiliation and rage. He looked at Monica, whose expression had shifted from contempt to something closer to fear. And he looked at Emily Sterling, who was offering him something he'd stopped believing in, a chance. "Before I accept," Marcus said slowly, "I have a condition." Douglas made a sound of disgust. "You see, he's already making demands." Emily ignored him. "Name it." "I need to pick my daughter up from school every day at 3 o'clock. I need to be home for dinner every night. I need weekends free unless there's a genuine emergency." Marcus held Emily's gaze. "I won't miss her childhood for any job, no matter how good the offer." Douglas threw his hands up. "This position requires round-the-clock availability. Client emergencies don't follow school schedules. System failures don't wait for bedtime stories." "Then I'll restructure the position," Emily said calmly. "We'll build a team that can provide coverage. We'll implement protocols that don't require one person to be available every minute of every day. That's not how this industry works." "Then we'll change how this industry works." Emily turned to Douglas with ice in her eyes. "Unless you're suggesting that our survival depends on exploiting employees rather than respecting them. Unless you're suggesting that the only way to run a successful company is to demand that people sacrifice their families for our profits." Douglas had no response. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Monica tried one last time. "The board will have questions. They'll want explanations." "The board will get explanations. They'll get a detailed report on exactly what happened today, exactly how we failed, and exactly how Marcus Thompson saved us." Emily smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm sure they'll be very interested to learn that our head of cybersecurity was unable to stop an attack that a man with a 2-year employment gap resolved in 17 seconds. I'm sure they'll have questions about that." Douglas's face went pale. "In fact," Emily continued, "I think we should schedule that meeting as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning, perhaps. Give everyone a chance to explain their performance today. Emily. Douglas's voice had changed. The anger was gone. In its place was something that sounded almost like fear. Let's not be hasty. Obviously, we're all grateful for what Mr. Thompson did. I never suggested otherwise. You suggested he might be a criminal. I was just being cautious, protecting the company. The company didn't need protection from Marcus Thompson. The company needed protection from malware that your department was supposed to prevent. Emily's voice was merciless. Maybe if you'd spent less time mocking candidates in the lobby and more time doing your job, we wouldn't have needed a stranger to save us. The silence that followed was devastating. Douglas looked at the floor. Monica looked at her tablet. Neither of them spoke. Emily turned back to Marcus. Her expression softened. I apologize for their behavior. Today and every day before it. The way my staff treated you is not the company culture I thought I had built. She paused. I've spent 3 years trying to prove that Sterling Dynamics could be different. That we could value talent over connections, character over credentials. Today showed me how wrong I was about what we've actually become. You can't control everything, Marcus said quietly. People are going to judge. They're going to assume. That's just how it is. Maybe. But I can control who works here. I can control what behavior we reward and what we punish. She glanced at Douglas and Monica. Starting today, things are going to change. Maya stood up from the floor, the book still in her hands. She walked over to Marcus and tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, does this mean you got the job? Marcus looked at Emily. She nodded. He knelt down and pulled Maya into a hug. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy got the job. Maya squeezed him tight. I knew you would. I knew it. How did you know? Because Mommy told me. Maya pulled back, her face serious. She said you were the smartest person she ever met. She said you could do anything if people just gave you a chance. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, running down his cheek. When did she tell you that? Before she went to heaven. She made me promise to remember. Maya reached up and wiped the tear from his face. Don't cry, Daddy. Happy things aren't supposed to make you cry. Sometimes they do, sweetheart. Sometimes happy things make you cry because you've been waiting so long to feel them. Behind them, Emily Sterling stood with her hand pressed to her heart, watching a father and daughter hold each other in the middle of her office. Douglas and Monica had slipped out at some point. Neither of them had said goodbye. The sun was setting over the city, painting the windows gold and orange. Maya's crayon drawing was still tucked in her backpack, 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. But now there was a third figure in that picture, small, curly-haired, standing between them. A family incomplete but still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. Marcus stood lifting Maya into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist and rested her head on his shoulder, exhausted from the longest day of her young life. I should get her home, he said. It's past her bedtime. Emily nodded. Of course. We can work out the details tomorrow. Come in whenever you're ready. No rush. Marcus started toward the door, then stopped. He turned back. Thank you, he said, for listening. For believing me. Thank you for not giving up, Emily replied. For not walking out when you had every reason to. I almost did. When your security staff accused me of planting the attack, I almost grabbed my daughter and left. Let the whole building burn. What stopped you? Marcus looked at Maya, already half asleep, against his shoulder. She did. She asked me if I was going to help the scared people. And I realized that's who I want to be. The kind of man who helps even when helping hurts. Even when the people I'm helping don't deserve it. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she crossed the room and pressed something into his hand. A business card. Simple white cardstock with her name and number. If you ever need anything, she said, anything at all, call me. Marcus tucked the card into his pocket. I will. He walked out of the office carrying his daughter, leaving behind the most unexpected day of his life. In the elevator, Maya stirred against his shoulder. Daddy. Yeah, sweetheart. I like the cookie lady. Marcus smiled. Me too, baby. Me too. The doors opened onto the lobby. The same marble floors, the same glass walls, the same space that had felt so hostile hours ago. But something had changed. The receptionist who had smirked at him this morning was gone. In her place sat a night security guard who nodded respectfully as Marcus passed. Good evening, sir. Have a good night. Sir. Marcus couldn't remember the last time someone had called him that. He walked through the revolving doors into the cool evening air. Maya warm against his chest, the city lights glittering like promises. $12 in his bank account. 5 crumpled bills in his pocket. But for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Thompson felt rich. The first morning was the hardest. Marcus stood outside Sterling Dynamics at 7:45 a.m. Maya's hand in his, staring up at the building that had nearly destroyed him 3 days ago. The same marble lobby, the same glass walls, the same revolving doors that had pushed back against him like a warning. But this time, he had a keycard. Daddy, are you scared? Marcus looked down at his daughter. She was wearing her purple dress again, the one Sarah had bought. He'd tried to convince her to wear something else, but Maya had insisted. This is my lucky dress, she'd said. It helped you get the job, now it'll help you keep it. A little scared, Marcus admitted. But that's okay. Being scared means you're doing something important. Mommy used to say that. She did. She was a very smart lady. Maya squeezed his hand. I'm a little scared too. What if the cookie lady isn't there? Ms. Sterling. She'll be there. And even if she's not, I'll be with you. We stick together, remember? We're the Thompsons. That's right. Now let's go show these people what Thompsons are made of. They walked through the revolving doors together. The lobby was different at 7:45 in the morning. Quieter, less crowded. The night security guard from 3 days ago was gone, replaced by a middle-aged man who checked Marcus's keycard with professional efficiency. Mr. Thompson, welcome to Sterling Dynamics. He handed back the card. 12th floor. Ms. Sterling asked me to let her know when you arrived. Thank you. Marcus led Maya toward the elevator, hyper-aware of the eyes following them. Word had spread. Of course it had. In a company this size, gossip traveled faster than email. The man who saved us. The single father with the little girl. The one who made Douglas look like a fool. He could feel the whispers even when he couldn't hear them. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus stepped into his new life. Emily was waiting for him on the 12th floor. She wore a different suit today, dark blue instead of black, but her expression was the same. Warm, genuine, like she was actually happy to see him. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? Honestly, I wasn't sure. Emily smiled. Most people after what you went through would have taken the first offer and run. Found a job somewhere less complicated, somewhere without people like Douglas making their lives difficult. I don't run from difficult. No, I'm beginning to understand that. Emily knelt down to Maya's level. Good morning, Miss Thompson. Did you bring your coloring books? Maya nodded shyly, clutching her backpack straps. Excellent. I have a special place set up for you in your father's new office, with extra cookies. Maya's eyes went wide. Extra cookies? Extra cookies. And crayons. And a very comfortable chair right by the window where you can watch the birds. Can I color you another picture? I would love that more than anything. Marcus watched the exchange with something tight in his chest. Emily Sterling, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was kneeling on the floor talking to his 7-year-old daughter about crayons and birds. This wasn't how corporate America was supposed to work. Come on, Emily said, standing. I'll show you to your office. We have a lot to discuss. The office was bigger than Marcus's entire apartment. Not that he was complaining. It had everything he needed: a desk, a computer, a small meeting table, and a corner area that had been transformed into a child's paradise. Beanbag chairs, a small bookshelf filled with children's books, a table perfectly sized for a 7-year-old already stocked with paper and crayons. Maya immediately abandoned Marcus to explore her new territory. "You did all this?" Marcus asked. "I had my assistant handle the details, but yes, I wanted Maya to feel welcome, to feel safe." Emily paused. "I know what it's like to grow up in offices. My father used to bring me here when I was her age. I'd spend hours in his office doing homework, watching him work. Some of my happiest memories are from this building." "Thank you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Emily's voice was firm. "You're part of this company now, Marcus. Both of you. And I take care of my people." Before Marcus could respond, a knock came at the door. A young man with nervous energy and an oversized ID badge stepped in. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Kevin Wu. We met during your interview." Marcus remembered him, the youngest member of the interview panel. The one who had looked uncomfortable while Richard Garrett attacked him. The only one who had shown anything resembling sympathy. "Kevin, good to see you again. I've been assigned as your liaison, to help you get oriented, show you the systems, introduce you to the team." Kevin glanced at Emily. "If that's okay." "That's exactly what I wanted." Emily turned to Marcus. "Kevin's one of our best. He'll answer any questions you have about how things work around here. And the things he can't answer, come to me directly." Emily handed him a phone, a company device, sleek and new. "My personal number is programmed in. Use it." She left without ceremony, her heels clicking down the hallway with the rhythm of someone who had 100 other fires to put out. Kevin stood awkwardly by the door, clearly unsure how to proceed. "So," Marcus said, "where do we start?" The next 3 hours were a crash course in Sterling dynamics. Kevin walked Marcus through the security infrastructure, the network architecture, the protocols that were supposed to have prevented the attack 3 days ago. He explained the team structure, the reporting lines, the political landmines that dotted the organizational chart like buried explosives. Marcus absorbed it all, asking questions, taking notes, building a mental map of the territory he was about to enter. "What about Douglas?" he asked finally. "What's his status?" Kevin hesitated. "He's still head of IT operations. Technically, you report to him." "Technically." Emily made it clear that your cybersecurity initiative operates independently. You have direct access to her. Douglas can't override your decisions or block your budget requests. Kevin lowered his voice. "He's not happy about it." "I imagine not. He's been telling people you're a fraud, that the attack was staged, that Emily's making a mistake trusting you." Marcus had expected as much. "And what do people believe?" "Most of them saw the footage from the server room. 17 seconds. That's hard to fake." Kevin shrugged. "But Douglas has friends. People who've been here longer than Emily. People who think things should be done the old way." "The old way being what exactly?" "Hierarchy, seniority, paying your dues." Kevin met Marcus's eyes. A black single father walking in off the street and getting a leadership position, that's not how it's supposed to work, not according to them. Marcus nodded slowly. He'd known this was coming, had prepared for it, but hearing it stated so plainly still hit differently. "Thanks for being honest. You deserve honesty. What you did saved this company, saved a lot of jobs, including mine." Kevin paused. "I'm on your side, Mr. Thompson, for what it's worth." "It's worth a lot. And call me Marcus." At noon, Maya announced she was hungry. Marcus took her to the company cafeteria, aware of every eye that tracked their movement through the building. The whispers were louder now, less subtle. He caught fragments as they passed. "That's him. The one who brought his kid to work, can you believe? Emily's lost her mind giving him. Douglas says he's a plant, that the whole thing was." Maya heard them too. Her hand tightened around Marcus's fingers. "Daddy, why are they talking about us? Because we're new, sweetheart. People always talk about new things. Are they saying bad stuff? Marcus considered lying. Considered protecting her the way he always had, building walls between her innocence and the world's cruelty. But Maya was 7 now. She understood more than he gave her credit for. Some of them might be saying bad stuff, he admitted. But that's okay. We can't control what other people say. We can only control what we do. What should we do? We should get lunch, and then we should do our jobs so well that they don't have anything bad left to say. Maya thought about this. Okay, can I get chicken nuggets? You can get whatever you want. The cafeteria was crowded, but a table near the window sat empty. Marcus guided Maya there, settling her into a chair before going to get their food. When he returned, someone was standing by their table. Douglas. Mr. Thompson. His voice was pleasant enough, but his eyes were cold. I see you found the cafeteria. Douglas. Marcus set down the tray. Can I help you with something? Just wanted to welcome you to the team, formally. Douglas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I know we got off on the wrong foot. The stress of the crisis, you understand. I said some things I shouldn't have. You accused me of terrorism. I was being cautious, protecting the company. Douglas spread his hands. Surely you understand. In my position, you would have done the same. No, I wouldn't have. The smile flickered. Well, we all have different management styles. Maya was watching the exchange with wide eyes, her chicken nuggets forgotten. Was there something else? Marcus asked. Just a friendly heads up. This company has traditions, ways of doing things that have worked for decades. Emily's young, enthusiastic. Sometimes she doesn't understand how things really work around here. Douglas leaned closer. I'd hate to see you get caught in the middle of something, especially with your situation. My situation. Single father, limited support system, a child who depends on you. Douglas's voice dropped. This job is demanding, Marcus. May I call you Marcus? It requires commitment, sacrifice, late nights, weekends, constant availability. The kind of availability that's difficult for someone in your position. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Is that a threat? A warning? From someone who's been here a lot longer than Emily has. Douglas straightened. I'm just looking out for you. Wouldn't want you to get in over your head. He walked away before Marcus could respond, disappearing into the crowd of employees. Maya tugged at Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, I don't like that man. Neither do I, sweetheart. Is he going to be mean to you? Marcus looked across the cafeteria where Douglas had joined a table of older executives. They were all looking in his direction, all talking. He's going to try, Marcus said. But that's okay. We've dealt with mean people before. Like the doctors who said Mommy couldn't get better? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had to take a breath before he could respond. Yeah, baby, like that. But we got through that, didn't we? Maya nodded solemnly. We're the Thompsons. That's right. Now eat your nuggets before they get cold. The board meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. Emily had warned him it was coming. The board wanted answers. They wanted to understand how the attack had happened, how it had been stopped, and what changes needed to be made to prevent it from happening again. They also wanted to meet the man who had saved them. Marcus spent the hour before the meeting reviewing his notes, preparing his presentation, making sure Maya was settled with a fresh batch of cookies and a new coloring book. Daddy has to go talk to some important people, he explained. Kevin's going to stay with you. Is that okay? Maya looked at Kevin, who gave her an awkward wave. Can he color with me? If he wants to. I'd be honored, Kevin said. I'm pretty good at staying inside the lines. Maya considered this. Okay, but you have to use the good crayons, not the broken ones. Deal. Marcus kissed her forehead, and headed for the boardroom. Emily met him outside the door. Her expression was tense, controlled the face of someone about to walk into battle. Ready? As I'll ever be. They're going to ask hard questions. Some of them are Douglas's allies. They'll try to discredit you to make Emily look bad for hiring you. I figured. Don't let them get to you. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. Emily put a hand on his arm. I believe in you. Don't forget that. They walked in together. The boardroom was different from the conference room where Marcus had been interviewed. Bigger, more intimidating. A massive table dominated the space, surrounded by chairs filled with men and women in expensive suits. Douglas sat at one end, his expression smug. Beside him was Richard Garrett, the man who had interrogated Marcus during the interview. The same cold eyes, the same thin-lipped smile. Emily took her seat at the head of the table. Marcus stood beside a presentation screen, feeling the weight of a dozen hostile gazes. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily began, thank you for convening on short notice. As you know, 3 days ago, Sterling Dynamics experienced a significant cyber attack. We're here to discuss what happened, how we responded, and what steps we're taking to ensure it doesn't happen again. A woman with silver hair and sharp cheekbones leaned forward. We're also here to discuss some unconventional hiring decisions. Yes, Margaret, we'll address that as well. Emily nodded to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, please walk us through the attack and your response. Marcus stepped forward. His hands were steady. His voice was clear. He had faced worse than this. He had buried his wife. He had held his daughter while she screamed for her mother. He had survived 2 years of poverty and rejection and despair. A room full of executives in expensive suits was nothing. At approximately 11:47 a.m. on Monday, Sterling Dynamics was hit by a polymorphic ransomware attack, he began. The malware used a self-modifying code base that allowed it to adapt to countermeasures in real time. Standard antivirus protocols were ineffective because the program rewrote itself every time it was detected. And how did you happen to know so much about this particular malware? Richard's voice was silky, dangerous. Because I fought it before, 3 years ago at Meridian Tech. Meridian Tech, Richard smiled. The company that collapsed after a similar attack, the one where you were terminated for poor performance. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. I was terminated for taking leave to care for my dying wife. My work on the malware response was stolen by my supervisor and credited to someone else. The company collapsed because they fired the one person who knew how to stop it. Murmurs rippled around the table. Douglas leaned forward. That's a very convenient story. Do you have any proof? The depositions from 17 lawsuits against Meridian Tech name my former supervisor in multiple instances of intellectual property theft. Those are public record. Depositions aren't verdicts. No, but they are evidence, which is more than you had when you accused me of terrorism. The room went silent. Emily cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson, please continue. Marcus walked them through the technical details, the backdoor technique he'd used, the dependency loop in the malware's core, the 17-second intervention that had stopped the attack cold. When he finished, the room was quiet. Even Douglas seemed reluctantly impressed. Margaret, the silver-haired woman, spoke first. Mr. Thompson, your technical expertise is clearly impressive, but I have concerns about your personal situation. What concerns? You're a single father with a young child. You have no family support system in this area. You've been out of the industry for 2 years. She folded her hands on the table. This position requires significant commitment. How can we be confident you'll be available when we need you? Marcus had prepared for this question, had rehearsed his answer a dozen times, but standing in that boardroom surrounded by people who had already decided he wasn't enough, something shifted inside him. He was tired of defending himself, tired of explaining why being a father didn't make him weak, tired of apologizing for prioritizing the one person in the world who needed him most. My daughter is 7 years old, he said quietly. Her mother died 2 years ago. I'm all she has. The room was silent. For the past 2 years, I've worked night shifts at a warehouse and weekend IT jobs for small businesses. I've made $17 an hour sweeping floors and $11 an hour fixing computers that were older than me. I've done whatever it took to keep my daughter fed and housed and safe. He looked at Margaret, at Douglas, at Richard, at every person in that room who had looked at him and seen liability instead of value. I've learned to optimize every minute of every day because I had no choice. I've learned to solve problems faster than anyone because I couldn't afford to waste time. I've become the most efficient version of myself because my daughter's well-being depended on it. He took a breath. You want to know if I'll be available when you need me? Here's my answer. 3 days ago, your entire company was burning to the ground. Your security team, your highly paid, highly credentialed security team couldn't stop it. They had 30 minutes and unlimited resources and they failed. His voice hardened. I stopped it in 17 seconds, with my daughter sitting 10 feet away, while people accused me of being a criminal, while your staff whispered that I didn't belong here. The silence in the room was absolute. I don't need to work 18-hour days to be effective. I don't need to sacrifice my family to prove my commitment. What I need is the chance to do my job, and I will do it better than anyone you've ever hired. He turned to Emily. You asked me to build a cybersecurity initiative. I'll build it. I'll create protocols that prevent attacks like Mondays from ever happening again. I'll hire a team of people who are talented and dedicated and human people who have families and responsibilities and lives outside this building. He looked back at the board. And I'll do it while picking my daughter up from school at 3 o'clock every day, while being home for dinner every night, while showing her that success doesn't require abandoning the people you love. That's a beautiful speech, Douglas said dryly. But speeches don't protect networks. No, results do. Marcus met his eyes. And my results speak for themselves. Emily stood. I think we've heard enough. The board can deliberate, but I want to be clear about my position. Marcus Thompson saved this company. The attack that hit us was sophisticated, adaptive, and devastating. Without his intervention, we would have lost everything: client data, financial records, our reputation. She looked around the table. I hired him because he's the best person for this job. Not because of his credentials, not because of his connections, but because when everything was falling apart, he was the only one who knew what to do. She paused. If that makes anyone uncomfortable, I suggest they consider whether their discomfort is about competence or something else. The implication hung in the air. Margaret shifted in her seat. Richard's expression flickered. Even Douglas looked away. The board will vote, Margaret said finally. But I think the outcome is clear. The vote was 7-2 in favor of Marcus's appointment. Douglas and Richard were the dissenting votes. No one was surprised. Emily found Marcus afterward standing in the hallway outside the boardroom. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline finally draining away. You did well in there. I almost lost it, he admitted. When Margaret started questioning my commitment. But you didn't. You stayed focused. You made your case. Emily smiled. The board was impressed. Even the ones who voted against you. They voted against me because I'm black. Because I'm a single father. Because I don't fit their idea of what a leader should look like. Probably. Emily didn't deny it. But now you're here anyway. You've got the job, the authority, the resources. What are you going to do with them? Marcus thought about the question. About the 2 years he'd spent being invisible. About the 3 years before that, when his work had been stolen and his career destroyed. About the promise he'd made to Sarah and the promise he'd made to himself. I'm going to build something that lasts, he said. Something that shows Maya and everyone else that you don't have to sacrifice your soul to succeed. Emily nodded slowly. Good. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. She turned to go, then stopped. Marcus. Yeah. Thank you for not giving up, for believing this place could be different. He thought about the lobby where he'd been mocked, the interview where he'd been humiliated, the accusations, the whispers, the thousand small cruelties that had tried to break him. And he thought about Emily Sterling, who had seen something in him that no one else had bothered to look for. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove it. She smiled a real smile, the first one he'd seen that reached her eyes, and walked away. Marcus stood in the hallway for a long moment, watching her go. Then he went to get his daughter. Maya was still coloring when he arrived, Kevin sitting beside her with a half-finished picture of his own. "Daddy!" She jumped up and ran to him. "Look what Kevin made. It's a spaceship." "It's supposed to be a dinosaur," Kevin said sheepishly. "I'm not great at coloring." Marcus laughed a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep. "It's a beautiful spaceship dinosaur." He picked up Maya and held her close, breathing in the smell of crayons and cookie crumbs and childhood. "How did your meeting go?" she asked. "It went well, sweetheart. Daddy's going to be working here for a long time." "Good." Maya yawned. "I like it here. The cookies are really good." "The highest praise," Kevin said. Marcus smiled. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." They walked out of Sterling Dynamics together, father and daughter hand in hand, leaving behind a building full of people who had doubted them. Some of those people were still doubting, still whispering, still waiting for Marcus to fail. But for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Thompson wasn't afraid of failing. He was ready to succeed. 6 months changed everything. Marcus stood at the window of his office, watching the sun rise over the city. The same view he'd seen that first morning, when his hands had been shaking and his future had been uncertain. But now the view meant something different. Now, it meant home. "Daddy, you're going to be late." Maya's voice pulled him back. She was standing in the doorway of her corner space backpack, already on purple dress, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt that said "Future CEO" in sparkly letters. Emily had given it to her for her 8th birthday. "I'm never late, sweetheart. I'm strategically punctual." "That's what you say when you're late." Marcus laughed. "Who taught you to be so smart?" "Mommy." Maya said it simply without sadness. Just a fact. "She said I got it from her side of the family." She wasn't wrong. They walked out of the office together past the security team Marcus had built from scratch. 12 people now where there had been chaos before. 12 people who had been overlooked by other companies, single parents, career changers. People with gaps in their resumes and fire in their hearts. "Morning, boss," called out Janelle, a former social worker who had taught herself cybersecurity during her lunch breaks. "The quarterly report is on your desk." "Thanks, Janelle. How's your mom doing?" "Better. The new medication is helping." She smiled. "Thank you for asking. Thank you for letting me work from home last week." Family comes first. Always. They passed the IT department where Kevin was already hunched over his keyboard. He looked up as Marcus walked by and gave a thumbs up. "Systems clean. No threats detected." "Keep it that way." "Always do." The elevator took them down to the lobby where the morning rush was just beginning. People streamed through the revolving doors, coffee cups in hand, phone conversations already underway. 6 months ago, Marcus had walked through those same doors with $12 in his bank account and a daughter who needed breakfast. Now he walked through them with a salary that let him sleep at night and a daughter who had more crayons than she knew what to do with. "Mr. Thompson." The voice came from behind the reception desk. Monica stood there, tablet in hand, expression uncertain. She had never apologized for the way she'd treated him that first day. Neither had Douglas. Some wounds didn't heal with words. But she had stopped smirking, had stopped whispering, had started treating him like a human being instead of an inconvenience. It wasn't forgiveness. It was progress. "Monica." Ms. Sterling wanted me to remind you about the investor meeting at 2. She said you'd know what it was about. I know, thank you. Marcus guided Maya toward the door, but she stopped and turned back. Hi, Monica. Monica blinked, caught off guard. Hello, Maya. I made you a picture. Maya pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack and held it out. It's a flower, because you have flowers on your desk. Monica took the paper with hands that trembled slightly. She unfolded it, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression. Something softening. Thank you, Maya. It's beautiful. You're welcome. Daddy says everyone deserves flowers even when they're having a hard day. Monica looked at Marcus. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Your father is a wise man, she said finally. I know. Maya took Marcus's hand again. Bye, Monica. They walked out into the morning sun, leaving Monica standing at her desk, holding a crayon flower like it was something precious. That was kind of you, Marcus said. She looked sad, Maya replied. People who look sad need pictures. Where did you learn that? From you, Daddy. You gave Mommy pictures when she was in the hospital. Remember, you drew them yourself, even though you're not very good at drawing. Marcus remembered. Late nights in the hospital room, Sarah too weak to hold a book, too tired to watch television. He'd started drawing pictures for her terrible pictures, stick figures, and lopsided houses, and crooked suns. She'd laughed at every single one. I love them, she'd whispered. They're perfect because you made them. I remember, sweetheart. I think Mommy would be happy that we give pictures to sad people now. I think she would be too. They reached Maya's school just as the bell rang. She gave Marcus a quick hug and ran toward her classroom backpack, bouncing ponytail swinging. Love you, Daddy. Love you more, baby. She disappeared through the doors, and Marcus stood there for a moment watching the space where she'd been. 8 years old, growing so fast. Every day she looked more like Sarah. The same eyes, the same smile, the same stubborn tilt of her chin when she was determined to do something. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. The investor meeting was in 6 hours. He had work to do, but first he allowed himself one more moment, one more breath of morning air, one more second of gratitude for a life he'd almost lost. Then he turned and walked back towards Sterling Dynamics, ready to face whatever came next. The investor meeting was Douglas's last stand. Marcus didn't know that when he walked into the boardroom at 1:55 p.m. He didn't know that Douglas had spent the past 6 months building alliances, whispering doubts, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. All he knew was that Emily looked tense, more tense than usual. Everything okay? He asked quietly, taking his seat beside her. We'll see. The investors filed in, men and women with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Margaret was there, the silver-haired woman who had questioned Marcus's commitment 6 months ago. Richard Garrett sat in his usual spot expression, unreadable. And Douglas. Douglas sat at the end of the table with the satisfied expression of a man who had a secret. Emily called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin the quarterly review, I understand there's a matter that needs to be addressed. Douglas stood up. Thank you, Emily. I'll keep this brief. He walked to the front of the room, tablet in hand, and Marcus felt the temperature drop. 6 months ago, this company made an unconventional hiring decision. Marcus Thompson was brought in to lead our cybersecurity initiative, despite having no corporate experience in the past 2 years, despite bringing a child to his interview, despite numerous red flags that any competent HR department would have caught. Douglas, Emily started. Please, let me finish. Douglas's smile was thin, dangerous. I've spent the past 6 months reviewing Mr. Thompson's work, his hiring decisions, his protocols, his access to sensitive systems. He tapped his tablet, and a series of documents appeared on the screen behind him. What I've found is concerning. Mr. Thompson has hired 12 people for his team, none of them through standard channels. Background checks were expedited. Reference requirements were waived. Several of his hires have employment gaps similar to his own. Marcus felt his hands clench under the table. He forced himself to breathe. Additionally, Mr. Thompson has been given unprecedented access to our financial systems, our client databases, our proprietary software. Access that in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. Are you accusing him of something specific? Margaret asked. I'm raising concerns. Legitimate concerns that this board should take seriously. Douglas turned to face Marcus directly. Mr. Thompson, can you explain why you hired Janelle Morrison, a former social worker with no formal cybersecurity training? She has a natural talent for pattern recognition and completed 3 professional certifications in 6 months. She's one of the best analysts on my team. And David Chenaman, who was fired from his previous job for attitude problems. He was fired for refusing to cover up a security breach that his supervisor wanted to hide. He's one of the most ethical people I've ever worked with. Douglas's smile widened. And what about your relationship with Ms. Sterling? Some might say it's inappropriate. A CEO showing such favoritism toward a single employee. The room went silent. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, hot, dangerous, the kind he'd learned to control over years of being overlooked and dismissed. But before he could respond, Emily stood up. That's enough. Her voice was quiet, controlled, but something in it made Douglas take a step back. For 6 months you've been undermining this man, whispering to investors, questioning his competence, spreading rumors about his character. Emily walked toward Douglas, and the room seemed to shrink around them. I've let it go because I believed in giving people chances, because I hoped you would see what everyone else has seen, that Marcus Thompson is the best thing that's happened to this company in years. Emily, I'm simply doing my due diligence. You're protecting your ego. You're angry because a man with a 2-year employment gap did in 17 seconds what your entire department couldn't do in 30 minutes. You're angry because he's better than you, because he's shown everyone in this company what real competence looks like. Douglas's face flushed red. Now, wait a minute. No, you wait. Emily turned to the board. In the 6 months since Marcus Thompson joined this company, security breaches are down 87%. Client confidence has increased by 40%. We've landed 3 major contracts specifically because of the protocols his team implemented. She pulled out her own tablet and projected a different set of documents onto the screen. Meanwhile, in the 5 years before Marcus arrived, our security department under Douglas's supervision failed to prevent 17 significant breaches. 17. Including the attack that nearly destroyed us. The room was silent. I have here a report from an independent auditor confirming that our current security infrastructure is among the best in the industry. I have testimonials from clients praising the professionalism of Marcus's team. I have metrics showing that his unconventional hiring practices have resulted in a team with lower turnover, higher satisfaction, and better performance than any department in this building. She turned back to Douglas. So, yes, I hired a man who didn't fit your idea of what a leader should look like. I hired a man who prioritizes his daughter. I hired a man who believes that people deserve second chances, that talent matters more than credentials, that character matters more than connections. Her voice hardened. And I would do it again, 1,000 times over. Douglas stood frozen, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Margaret spoke. I think we've heard enough. The board has no concerns about Mr. Thompson's performance or his character. She looked at Douglas with something like disgust. We do, however, have concerns about the conduct of certain other employees. Perhaps it's time for a reorganization. The vote was unanimous. Douglas was removed from his position that afternoon. Given a severance package and escorted from the building by security, the same security he had once commanded. Marcus watched from his office window as Douglas walked across the parking lot, box in hand, shoulders slumped with defeat. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt tired. You okay? Emily stood in his doorway, her expression soft. I didn't want it to end like that, Marcus said. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. You didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. Emily walked in and stood beside him at the window. He had every chance to change, to adapt, to accept that the world wasn't going to stay the way he wanted it to be. Still, Emily nodded. I know. You're too good a person to enjoy watching someone fall, even someone who deserved it. They stood in silence, watching the sun move across the sky. Emily. Yes. Thank you for defending me in there, for believing in me when no one else did. She turned to face him. Her eyes were warm, soft. The eyes of someone who had stopped pretending she didn't feel what she felt. You made it easy, Marcus. All you had to do was be yourself. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility, heavy with things unsaid. Then Maya's voice echoed from down the hall. Daddy, I finished my homework. Can we get ice cream? Marcus smiled. We're not done talking about this. I know. Emily smiled back. I'm counting on it. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the same lobby where he'd once been mocked. But everything was different now. The company had transformed. Flexible schedules were standard. Parental leave was generous. The diversity initiatives that Emily had talked about were finally real, not just words on paper, but actual people in actual positions bringing perspectives that made the whole organization stronger. Marcus's team had grown to 30 people, single parents, career changers, people who had been told they weren't enough, that they didn't fit, that they should give up. He'd hired every single one of them. Ready, boss? Janelle stood beside him, tablet in hand, a smile on her face. She was his second in command, now the former social worker who had taught herself cybersecurity during her lunch breaks. Ready. They walked toward the conference room where the annual company meeting was about to begin. 200 employees filled the space, sitting in chairs, standing along the walls, watching the stage where Emily Sterling was about to speak. Maya sat in the front row between Kevin and 2 of her school friends who had come for the special occasion. She was 9 now, tall for her age, confident with Sarah's eyes and Marcus's stubborn determination. Emily took the stage, and the room fell silent. 3 years ago, this company was nearly destroyed. A cyber attack almost wiped out everything we'd built, every client, every record, every dream we'd worked so hard to achieve. She paused, letting the memory settle over the crowd. We were saved by a man who walked into this building with $12 in his bank account and a 7-year-old daughter holding his hand. A man who was laughed at in our lobby, humiliated in our interview room, and accused of being a criminal in our boardroom. Marcus felt eyes turning toward him. He kept his gaze on Emily. That man could have walked away, could have let us burn. God knows we deserved it after the way we treated him. Emily's voice caught slightly. But he didn't. Because that's not who Marcus Thompson is. He's the kind of person who helps even when helping hurts, even when the people he's helping don't deserve it. She looked directly at him. Marcus, would you come up here? The walk to the stage felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed in the silence. Every eye followed his movement. He climbed the stairs and stood beside Emily, looking out at the faces of people he'd worked with, fought with, built something with. 3 years ago, I made Marcus a promise, Emily said. I promised him that this company would be different, that we would value talent over connections, character over credentials, that we would judge people by what they could do, not by where they came from. She picked up something from the podium, a small crystal bowl that Marcus recognized immediately. Inside was Maya's crayon drawing, the one she'd made that first day in the conference room while her father was being torn apart by people who didn't know his worth. 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. This picture has sat on my desk for 3 years, Emily said. Every time I had a hard day, every time I wanted to give up or cut corners or do things the easy way instead of the right way, I looked at this picture. And I remembered what it represented. She turned to Marcus. It represented hope. A father's hope for his daughter. A daughter's hope for her father. The hope that somewhere out there someone would give them a chance. Emily handed him the bowl. "Marcus Thompson, you've changed this company. You've changed me. And I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say thank you. For not giving up. For believing we could be better. For showing us what courage really looks like." The room erupted in applause. Marcus stood there holding the crystal bowl, feeling tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, running down his cheek. Maya had told him once that happy things weren't supposed to make you cry. She'd been wrong about that. After the meeting, Marcus found a quiet corner of the building, a small terrace overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo album. The pictures of Sarah. Her smile on their wedding day. Her laugh at Maya's first birthday. Her brave face in the hospital, even when brave was the last thing she felt. "I did it, baby," he whispered. "I kept my promise." The wind stirred around him, gentle, warm. "Daddy." Maya appeared in the doorway, her silhouette outlined by the fading light. "Hey, sweetheart. What are you doing up here?" "Looking for you." She walked over and stood beside him, looking out at the city. "What are you doing?" "Talking to Mommy." Maya nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "What did you tell her?" "That I kept my promise. That I took care of you. That everything turned out okay." Did she answer? Marcus thought about the wind, the warmth, the feeling he'd had standing on this terrace like something invisible was wrapping around him. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think she did." They stood in silence, father and daughter, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. I'm proud of you." The words hit Marcus like a wave, unexpected, overwhelming, the kind of thing he hadn't known he needed to hear until he heard it. "Thank you, Maya." Mommy would be proud too. She'd probably cry because she always cried at happy things. "Remember?" "I remember." And then she'd make us get ice cream because she said ice cream was the only thing that made crying better. Marcus laughed, a sound that came from somewhere deep. Somewhere he'd thought was empty for a long time. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Let's go get ice cream." "Really? Really? But you have to promise me something first." "What?" Marcus knelt down so he was at her level. He looked into her eyes. Sarah's eyes filled with hope and love and the stubborn belief that good things were possible. "Promise me you'll always remember this. The hard times, the scary times, the times when it felt like the whole world was against us. Promise me you'll remember that we got through it. That we never gave up. That being scared never stopped us from doing what was right." Maya's expression was solemn, serious, like she understood exactly how much this moment mattered. "I promise, Daddy." "Good." He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and the fabric softener he used on her clothes. "I love you, Maya Thompson." "I love you too, Daddy." They walked back through the building together, past the offices and conference rooms and all the places where Marcus had fought and failed and finally succeeded. Emily was waiting for them in the lobby. "Ice cream run?" she asked, a smile playing at her lips. "How did you know?" Lucky guess. She fell into step beside them. "Mind if I join?" Maya grabbed her hand. "You have to come. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Maya thought about it. "Everything," she decided. "We're celebrating everything." They walked out of Sterling Dynamics together, a single father, his daughter, and the woman who had believed in them when no one else would. The city spread out before them, glittering with lights that were just beginning to flicker on. Somewhere out there, people were struggling. People were being told they weren't enough. People were sitting in lobbies waiting for chances that might never come. But somewhere out there, people were also succeeding, rising, proving that the world's judgment didn't have to be the final word. Marcus Thompson had walked into Sterling Dynamics 3 years ago with nothing but hope and his daughter's hand in his. Now he walked out with everything he'd ever wanted. Not the money, not the title, not the corner office with the view of the city. His daughter healthy and happy and proud of who he was. A job that let him be a father first. A future that Sarah would have been proud of. And the knowledge deep, unshakable, permanent that he had never given up. Not once. Not ever. The revolving doors pushed open into the evening air, and Marcus Thompson stepped through them without hesitation. Behind him was everything he'd overcome. Before him was everything he'd built. And beside him, holding his hand the same way she'd held it 3 years ago in that hostile lobby, was the reason he'd kept fighting. Maya looked up at him, her face bright with joy. "Daddy!" "Yeah, sweetheart. We did it." Marcus smiled a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes, the kind he'd almost forgotten how to make. "Yeah, baby. We did." The Thompson family walked into the sunset, and for the first time in a very long time, the future looked exactly like the picture Maya had drawn all those years ago. 2 figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Complete. Unbreakable. Home.